Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about the Waterfront, so let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so I was super excited to be watching the Waterfront. It was filmed in Wilmington, NC, the same place that One Tree Hill was filmed in, and I was super excited to kind of recognize some of the filming locations. But sadly, I did not see anything that looked familiar. Obviously, the Waterfront should have looked familiar, but I was really looking for the the table or the seating area where Nathan gave Haley her bracelet, and I could not find that location in anything that they showed on the beachfront near the harbor and all of that stuff. So I was really disappointed by that, but I'm super glad that I was able to recognize everything that was in Wilmington for the most part. The downtown area did look familiar, where Han was walking to Jenna's family hardware store or their fishery store, so that area did look a little bit familiar. There is a shop that I purchased something from that was in that store that Book stole from, but anyway, that area did look familiar, but that was really the extent of anything that I recognized. I was sad that they did not film in any of the houses that they used for One Tree Hill, but that's totally fine. But beyond that, I was excited to know that this was filmed in Wilmington, and then also too that the Dawson's Creek, someone who was affiliated with that, was also a part of this show, so I knew that it was going to be good. I also was interested in this show because I know that it was, it's about a family crime drama, and there was another show that I was watching just before this came out. I can't recall what it was, but whatever show it was, it got me into watching Mobland, which is also another family crime drama. That one, they're specifically engaged in, I think, selling drugs, where this one was more just kind of like a way to make ends meet or whatever. Obviously, as we get into the backstory, we know that the family does have past affiliations with drug cartels and all of that stuff, but this is definitely right up my alley. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and get into the rest of the episode. Okay, so first, what is the Buckley family business? So they live in Wilmington, so they're near the water, they're near the harbor, so they're into fishery. So they have a fishery where they basically get the fish that they then sell and use in their restaurant. They are a really well-known family in that area. I think they're in Havenport is the city that the show is set in. So their family name is all over everything. They're a well-known family. They have a lot of connections within that town. And what we find out is that Kane is the oldest son, and he is taking over the family business. The father is stepping down because he's having heart issues. I believe he has a pacemaker. And what we see in the beginning scenes or the first few minutes of the show, we see that Kane comes across a boat of his that is kind of like crashed on the beach. He knows that this boat was used for something, so he's freaking out. He goes and backdates paperwork to have shown that he sold the boat to someone else. That is his way of distancing himself from whatever was happening with the boat and what it was engaged in, all of that stuff, because he does not want that to come back on him and the family. We also see that the dad is sleeping around. He has a heart issue. He has to go to the hospital. His partner that he's cheating with calls his wife. She has to go to the hospital and all of that stuff. And so we see that the family dynamic is a little bit strained. They also have a daughter who cannot see her son. So we see her at her son's swim meet. She's asked to leave. Her ex-husband confronts her. He's recording. He makes a scene. We can see that the son Dilla sees all of it. So we know that Bree has a lot going on. We don't know why she can't quite see her son and all of that stuff, but we know that this family is dealing with a lot. So what we find out is that Kane is running drugs. The family business is not doing well. They need money and they need it fast. So Kane has started to run drugs using his boat for a guy named Hoyt. He does not know who Hoyt's supplier is, but they have an issue now that the boat is washed up ashore. The people who were running the drugs are nowhere to be found. We know that from the beginning moments of the show. They were killed after those people stole the drugs. And then we also know that Kane is on the hook for whatever happened with the drugs. The father finds out. He gets involved in all of this, and he's like, hey, you know, Hoyt is playing you. We need to go find him. We need to confront him. We need to find out who his supplier is. So we have Kane. At some point, he goes to Hoyt. He tries to get that information. He then takes that back to the dad, and then that's when the dad is like, hey, you know, he's playing you. We need to get the drugs back. And so they kidnap Hoyt. They first have him on the family boat or whatever, and they take off. Then they hold him underwater. They throw something in the water so the sharks are coming to that area, and then they forced him to tell them where he stored the drug. And so they go to that location after dark, and then the sheriff pulls up, and then we find out that the sheriff, Porter / Owen, is involved in everything that is going on with the drug. So he really enjoys having the Buckley family under his thumb. He tries to control and manipulate them. And what we find out is that he is really upset that the Buckleys basically own everything. And then he feels like when Harlan's father was killed, he really had a lot of sympathy for Harlan and wanted to buy him a drink, but Harlan would not let him, so he felt snubbed by this, especially because Harlan said, hey, you know, police officers don't make a lot of money, save your money, I got this. So he felt really offended that Harlan wouldn't even let him just buy a drink that really wasn't that expensive, so he felt slighted. And so he's very happy that he had the Buckley family under his thumb, and he really tried to make things difficult for them and really lord over them with his power. And so Harlan's like, hey, you know, he has to go, we need to take care of him. And then his wife Belle's like, no, you need to make peace, he can make things very difficult for us, he's in power, we are really kind of limited in what we can do here, we can't just take him out, right? And so we see Harlan go and try to make peace with him. He brings him a wine bottle, but then something happens and Owen pulls a gun out on him. They end up getting in some sort of fight, and Harlan is able to stab Owen through the neck with like a screwdriver or something like that. Bree is called to come help clean up the situation, and what they don't know is that there is a trail camera that captures their movement. They can't see everything that's happening, but you can clearly see Harlan pull up, then you see Bree pull up, then you see her putting stuff in the trunk and all of that stuff. And so because of everything that happened with the boat at the beginning of the first episode, we know that the DEA is involved. They're really trying to investigate and see what's going on. They eventually do leave, but there's one agent, Marcus, who stays behind, and it turns out that Bree is feeding information to him about her family. She really wants to get back at Kane, and we have no idea why. And so what ends up happening is that the family basically is responsible for getting rid of Owen. They have to cover this up. They install a new chief of police to kind of take Owen's spot, who's kind of indebted to them because they got him that position of power. And then what happens is they really wanted to meet Grady, and so Harlan has this guy, I can't recall his name, but he's like, hey, set up a meeting with Grady, I want to meet Grady. And so eventually that guy comes for him and says, hey, I'm gonna take you to Grady. And so Harlan goes to meet Grady, and Grady, I like Grady, he's funny, but he's very psychopathic, and he is really going to be a thorn in their side. And so he reminds me of Clifford from that movie. I guess it's called Clifford, I can't recall, but basically this is a grown-ass man. This is a grown-a man. This is a grown-a man who is basically manipulating the dad. He's manipulating the mom, and then he's really evil with the dad, but the mom can't see that how bad Clifford is. And this is exactly how Grady acts. So he's trying to be really like quirky and weird with Harlan. He's trying to bond with him. He looks up to him because he's found out about the family history. So Harlan's dad was killed. He was working with a crime family that he eventually, I guess, betrayed, and so he was killed for it. What we find out later on is that Bree actually witnessed everything. They told everyone that Bree was asleep and didn't know what happened, but she actually saw everything because her father put her in a closet to hide her, and then he was beaten to death in front of her. And then by the time that she came out, she saw him take his last breath. And so she has a lot of trauma from this, and this is why she has alcohol. I don't know if she takes drugs, but she has alcohol problems, and she is not doing well because of the trauma that she lived through and having to cover up and lie to people about what actually happened to protect herself and the family, because they did not want that family, Emmett's family, to come back and take care of Bree or whatever, because they knew what happened to the dad. So that is why Bree has so many problems. And what we also find out is that Kane was responsible for testifying against Bree, and that is what caused her to lose her custody of Diller. So what we know happened is that she set a fire, and Diller was still in the house, and then she had an ex-husband or ex-boyfriend, whatever, and he is really not a fan of hers. He wants to do everything he can to protect Diller and keep her away from the Buckleys and all of that stuff, and so he's really trying to make things difficult for her. Diller ends up getting a job at the family fishery. He really wants to take on the Buckley name. He's not supposed to be around Bree, I think 200 or 300 feet within Bree, or she's not supposed to be within that many feet of him without having a chaperone around, because it needs to be a supervised visit. And so he, by working in the fishery, he can get her in trouble because that's her job, that's her livelihood. She works for the family, but she's also on the outskirts of the family because of all of her addiction issues and the different things that she's done to make it difficult for them. So she's kept out of the loop of all of this stuff that is going on, and she doesn't know that she's actually getting her whole family in trouble by trying to inform on Kane, because she thinks that she's just getting back at him. She thinks that he's just doing all of this shady stuff and betraying the family, but she doesn't know how involved her mother is. Then obviously the dad gets involved because he did have this past history of running drugs for Emmett and his family. So now we have Harlan dealing with Grady directly. He's like, hey, you know, we're going to run drugs twice a week for you. Anything more than that is controversial. We can't do that. It draws too much attention. Grady shows up to the fishery, to the restaurant. He gets a tour from Diller, who doesn't really realize who this guy is, so he's overly friendly with him. And this family was very stupid because they didn't warn different family members about Grady, about what was going on. So everyone was kind of in the dark and only knew a little bit of information, but they didn't know enough to protect themselves from the DEA agent, to protect themselves from Grady and all of that stuff. And so Grady just showed up. They're trying to get him out of there because they don't want to be seen with him and kind of draw more attention to what they have going on. And then also we see that Grady does not like this. He wants to just come and go as he pleases. He feels like they are trying to control things, but he's really the one in charge, and so he doesn't like this, and he tries to make a point by making Harlan do this unexpected run, and Harlan's like, no, we can't do that, we agreed to 2 times a week. And so what ends up happening is Grady kidnaps Diller, and he basically sends a video to Harlan and says, hey, you know, or he calls him, whatever, video called him. He's like, hey, you know, I have Diller, we're out hunting, blah blah blah. And so obviously Harlan and Belle, they know that this is a threat of some sort, and so Harlan goes out there to join the trip, and he's hunting with them. They're shooting at birds. I can't recall what it's called, but they are doing that. And then Diller gets separated from them, and they're talking business. And then we see that Grady is not very good at this, and he's trying to track birds and shoot them, but he goes too low, and he ends up shooting Diller. And Diller's fine, but this is obviously what the family perceives to be a threat, because he did take Diller with the intention of hurting him to send a message to the Buckleys, and then we end up with him getting shot. And so Belle does not like this. She did not like Grady from the start, and so this is just another reason why she is even more hostile to Grady. She is outside, and he comes up with flowers, and she's like, hey, you know, you're not welcome here. She slaps him. His henchman grabs her. He's about to strike, and then Sean comes in, and he fights him off, and then he fights the other guy off. And Sean is a bartender, but what we find out is that he's actually Harlan's love child. He is the son of somebody named B.B. West, and his name is Sean West. He's gay. He's studying to be a lawyer, and so he's kind of roped into everything that the family has going on, because he did come there because he wanted to kind of know if this was a family that he wanted to involve himself in, if he wanted to get to know his father and all of that stuff. And so Belle is suspicious of him because he's not a good bartender, so she actually thinks that he's a DEA agent. He's not. He reveals who he is, and then they keep this from Harlan for a while, and then at some point Belle does tell him, and then he and Sean kind of start to form a relationship, and then Sean gets dragged deeper into what the family has going on. Okay, so aside from the family and the drug business that they have going on, I do want to talk about Kane. So Kane is married to a woman named Peyton. They have a daughter, and Peyton is Davina from the originals. I did not like her storyline in the originals. It was too dark and kind of creepy and all of that stuff. So she doesn't really have she has a significant role in the show, but she's not there for a large part of it. And I also don't think that we got to see enough of her character and kind of like how instrumental and influential she could be and valuable to the family that she could be. So her and Kane are on the outs because he's not really opening up to her. We do see that Jenna, his ex, is back in the picture, and she runs into Jenna first. She doesn't tell Kane. Kane sees her while she's out running, and we know that they dated in high school, and they probably would have stayed together. I don't know why they broke up or anything that happened with their backstory, but we know that Kane married Peyton. Peyton got pregnant, and that's why they got married. And they don't really seem like a good fit. They just seem like they're together. They make sense as a couple in terms of appearances, but what we see from Peyton is she seems very superficial. She's very into like the wealth, just displaying kind of like the power that the family has in Havenport, and so she's just really surfacey, and she's really territorial. She feels very threatened by Jenna, and she tells him like, hey, if you mess with my husband, I'm gonna come come for you, and all of this stuff. And so they have a dinner with Jenna's husband, obviously the three of them, Jenna, Kane, and Peyton. It doesn't go well because Jenna is high on drugs and she gives a gummy to Kane, and they're just high the whole time, making stupid jokes and really kind of like showing the bond that they have. The husband is kind of turned off by this. He doesn't really pay attention to what's going on, and it seems like from what Jenna says about their relationship, he doesn't really pay much attention to her anyway. So he ends up going back home. Peyton is really embarrassed by this. She doesn't like it, and she tells Kane as much to his face. And so what happens is she returns home from the dinner and she's attacked by two henchmen that Porter sent, and this is obviously happened before Harlan killed Owen. But basically she's attacked, they douse her with gasoline, they light a fire, and it trails towards her, but they stop it. So this is a clear message to her, like, hey, you need to get your family in line. You don't know what's going on, but you need to make sure that they get in line and they're following Owen and they're not giving him problems and all of that stuff. And so she's really scared by this, but they still don't tell her what's going on. So she ends up leaving and she's not really part of the storyline anymore. Then we have Kane kind of continuing to see Jenna. Her dad is sick and he's just a source of comfort for her because he knew her before all of this stuff happened, him taking over the business, him marrying Peyton. And so he's kind of, I guess, not really happy with where he is in life because he could have played college football, but his dad was like, hey, you know, you're not gonna make it to the pros. And really what we find out in the end was that his dad just wanted him to stay with the family in Havenport and run the business with him, because when Harlan was young, he ran the business with his father and he just wanted to do the same thing with his son. And then obviously he had his heart issue, so he wasn't as involved, but that is why he wanted to keep Kane in the city with them. So then what we have happening is Peyton just comes back. She's checking the ring camera. She sees that Kane has spent a few nights at the house. She confronts him about it, and then she finds out that he slept with Jenna. So then she goes to confront Jenna, but she finds out that Jenna's father died either last night or that morning, and she comforts Jenna. She makes all of the calls and the arrangements to get everything set up for his funeral, his wake service, and all of that stuff. And so she's really supportive and nice to Jenna, considering the fact that she knows that Jenna slept with her husband, and Jenna is aware of it, and they don't really talk about it because Peyton just wants to focus on being there for Jenna without kind of making everything messy and more difficult than it needs to be, considering what Jenna is going through. And also she is strategically using this moment of kindness as a way to make Jenna feel even more guilty, and so Jenna knows that she can't see Kane anymore with how nice Peyton is being to her when she doesn't really deserve it in this moment. And then kind of to wrap up that storyline, what we have happening is Kane ends up going to Peyton and he's like, hey, you know, I want to make this work, I want to be together. And then she's willing to like just wipe the slate clean, but it seems a little creepy the way she goes about it, because she's just she is eerily calm and she's just willing to let everything go. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen in season 2 with that marriage and that relationship, because she seems like she would be an asset to the family and they need to involve her in more stuff. But I'm also curious to see how their marriage and everything is going to play out. So as I mentioned, we have Bree wanting to get back at Kane. She's bought into everything. She realized how much her parents are involved, and she's realizing that she's made a huge mess of a situation and trying to get back at Kane. She's hurting her family. They're going to lose everything. She's making everything more difficult for them. And so she ends up going to the DEA agent who she's informing with, and she's also in a relationship with him. He was also an addict, so they probably met in AA. And she goes to him and she tries to get him back off. She can't, and so she ends up giving him drugs that he willingly takes, and then I guess he overdoses, and she feels bad about this because she is having to clean up the mess that she made. She's having to kill this man, and that causes her to relapse, and she takes drugs and all of that stuff. And so when she has to go to the hospital because she finds out that Diller's been shot and she's high, she's still coming down. Her mom, Belle, can tell that this is happening. The ex didn't pick up on it, but maybe he did, and then he forces her to take a drug test. She refuses because she knows that she's been taking drugs. And then also around this time, the ex-husband is trying to take Diller away because he's upset that Diller was working at the facility, was around the family, that he got shot, and then also that Bree is back on drugs again. And so I don't know how it happened, but Bree and her mom end up having a conversation, and basically she wants to get more into the family and kind of be trusted with things and given more responsibility. They're like, hey, you're not ready for this, especially since you relapsed. And Belle didn't quite realize that she killed the man. And so what we have happening is that the family, they go to Emmett, which is their former partner, I guess, that the grandfather was working with to run drugs, they go to that guy, Emmett, who is the guy's son that the grandfather was working with, and they go to him and say, hey, you know, we're dealing with this guy, we want out, we need to make X amount of money, we'll supply whatever you need, blah, 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 you just need to take care of Grady and get rid of him. So Emmett agrees to a deal, Emmett and his family agree to a deal. They send 2 men to take out Grady. Those men are sent back dead, and they're put in the family office, and so Kane comes across the bodies. He calls his mother in, she comes to help. Then Bree walks in and she's realizing like how much deep stuff the family is in, like she's actually seeing it. And then she tells her mom like, hey, you know, I killed Marcus because of X, Y, and Z. And so she is really kind of earning her place in the family and showing her loyalty through killing Marcus, and then also helping her mother clean up the blood and remove the bodies and all of that stuff. So now, once they know that Grady knows that they are coming for him, this leads to Bree getting kidnapped because, again, they don't tell anybody what's going on. And so Bree gets kidnapped when she's looking for Diller because he ran away. He is actually at the fishery, but he's like sleeping in a boat or something like that. She finds him, talks to him, and then she is looking for him again. She can't find him, and that's when she's taken. And when she wakes up, she's on a yacht. She is on Grady's yacht. She's in this bedroom. And then at some point, she's looking around for weapons. Someone's coming into the room, and it's her son Diller who snuck on the boat when he saw her being taken. And so she puts him in the closet, which is very reminiscent of when her grandfather put her in the closet to hide her when those guys came to kill him. And so I'm thinking she's gonna end up dead in front of him. We know that she fashioned a weapon of the wooden hanger, so she is prepared to defend herself. She is taken up front to meet with Grady. She doesn't really know who this guy is. She is forced to eat kind of like a meal with him, and then she's like calling the waiter over, and she's waiting for her moment to strike. So she ends up hitting the waiter over the head with a wine bottle. She takes his gun. She had it on them, and the stupidest thing that she does is she doesn't shoot anybody to make it like one-on-one with her and Grady, because she should have shot the waiter, she should have shot the boat driver, and then maybe one other person, and then kept her gun on Grady, and he would have been all that she had to worry about. But she takes too long, and she's like, hey, turn the boat around, blah blah blah, which is really stupid. Then what happened is there's another guy who's on the boat, because I think Diller told her to few people who were on the boat, so she may have thought there was just 4 or 5, but there's actually like 6 or 7. So there's another guy who's down there. He sees Diller, he takes him at gunpoint to the top, and then now she's at a disadvantage because now she's worried about her son who's being held at gunpoint. She puts the gun down, and then she goes to attack Grady. She stabs him with the wooden hanger that she took from downstairs, and then she's shot in the leg, and then she's thrown overboard, and then Diller throws her the raft that she's able to open and get herself into, but she's still bleeding out because she's shot in the leg. But she takes her belt off to kind of stop the blood from flowing or whatever, and that's the best thing that she can do for herself at that moment. And at this point, we know that Harlan is on his way to meet Grady to get Bree. He's supposed to go alone, but he has Sean and Kane with him. They're able to sneak on the boat. They're looking for her. They can't find her, and so then they make themselves known and they confront Grady and his men. They're able to disarm the men, get the guns from them, but then somebody ends up rushing Sean, and then all crap breaks loose. Everyone's running for a weapon. Grady is running for a machine gun, whatever. They catch up with him, Harlan and Kane, but then Grady starts taunting Kane because Harlan, he knows will shoot him, but he knows that Kane won't. And so I think what he's preparing to do is kind of throw himself overboard to get away from them. But he's taunting Kane and saying, hey, you know, your dad should be ashamed that he has you for a son. You're not going to do anything. And Kane ends up actually shooting him. And I'm glad that Kane stepped up and did that, because I was very confused, because at the beginning of season 1, we see Harlan giving, what's his name, Kane, a gun, and he gives him an empty gun without bullets, and he's talking about, oh, you know, it's empty so that when they steal it from you, they can't shoot you with it. And so this leads me to believe that Kane doesn't know how to handle guns, that he's soft and whatever, but then he actually knows how to hunt. And so what he reveals at the end is that he knows how to hunt, but he's never held a handgun before, he's never shot anyone. And so I feel like this is a huge kind of disconnect for me, because he should be comfortable enough with guns to hunt and to defend his family. And so that was where Harlan failed him, because he should have made sure that he was prepared to do all of that, especially with the family's back history and backstory with drugs and how their father was killed. Kane should have definitely been prepared to defend the family prior to that. And so he does end up shooting Grady. Grady's dead. He's not a threat anymore. they go to the hospital, and we know that the family is trying to make a deal with Emmett to kind of get him to replace Grady, take care of that problem for them. But at the same time, we know that the family had the option of running drugs and or developing a land deal. And so Bella's working with this guy named Wes. She ends up sleeping with him. But what it comes out is that he's actually double-crossing the family. He's putting things into play at the bank to where they're going to be forced to pay the debt that they owe within 45 days. And then if they can't pay it, he gets to take the land, he gets to develop it, he gets to make money and leave them out of it. And so Kane and Belle find out about this, and then somehow in the course of them working with Emmett, he reveals like, hey, I know that your family's in trouble, they owe money, I'm willing to help you guys out as long as you're the head of everything that's going on, I think. And so what happens at the end, where we see the ending of this season, is that we see that Emmett has basically kidnapped Wes. He's having him beat up and all of this stuff, and that guy is now at the mercy of Belle, who I guess is going to be in charge of everything. And so we'll see what happens in season 2, as that is where season 1 ends. Alrighty, so to wrap up this episode, I'm really excited to see where season 2 goes. We know that we have Ken and his wife dealing with their issues. We don't know what's going to happen with them. Bree is recovering. She had surgery. She gets to keep her leg. Diller was being threatened to be moved to a different state because the dad got a better job. His new wife is super annoying because she kept interfering with their relationship. Like when the dad went to the hospital and the mom was already back there, he's like, oh, well, you know, only one parent is there. You have to wait until she's done. He's like, but he's his father. And it's like, well, she's his mother and she's back there. You guys need to deal with it. And then the scene where she had a peanut cup, she's like, oh, well, that's our child. She didn't birth him, so that's not our child, whatever. So his new wife is annoying. So I'm very curious to see where that goes, because I would like for Bree and Diller to maintain their relationship and have a better relationship now that she's getting healthier and she's working on herself. And then also I have no idea what's going to happen with Harlan and Belle, being that Belle is supposed to take over the family and all of that stuff. And so it'll just be interesting to see what happens in season 2. Also, don't let me forget about Sean and how he is Harlan's love child. How is he going to integrate into the family? With him being a lawyer, is he going to be able to be the family lawyer? Is he going to be like, what's his name from Yellowstone? I don't know, but hopefully he stays around the family and he can kind of be a support system for Kane, being that he's one skilled in fighting. I'm not sure if he knows how to use a gun, but he's just another person that they can rely on, being that he's gone through all of this stuff with them. And yeah, so I'm really excited for season 2. Hopefully it gets renewed. I have not checked on anything to see if they're even doing a season 2, but I would definitely watch that. I'm gonna leave this video there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.